Let me try my other head. Let me try this other. Oh, wait a minute.
I hear that.
Did you hear that? Hilarious. You impress the hell out of me with these moves, these dance moves. What the hell is going on right there? Okay.
I got me a fancy cocktail today.
What you got?
Aperol Spritz.
That is fancy. Oh boy.
Teams chat. She's probably on a demo right now saying, how do I turn off these damn notifications?
Right. I know, we were cracking up about that earlier.
I love it. Okay, now I'm all caught up.
What's up, Lauren?
Has she arrived?
She's arrived. I don't hear her yet. Oh, she doesn't have her microphone hooked.
I see her.
Here she is, connecting to audio.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Oh, that hair looks gorgeous. You must have brushed it.
It really was like nappy.
It was.
It was really bothering me. And so Cece fell out of her crib.
What?
I know.
Is she okay?
She's fine, but I was in here. I put her down for a nap. I was in here, which is like across the hall from her room, and I hear a loud thud. And I go in there, and she fell out of the crib. I mean, she was fine, but hysterical and upset.
Was she sleeping or she crawled over the edge?
She crawled over the edge because she wanted to get out. She kept being like, "You gotta go potty." I was like, "No, you don't. I know you don't have to go potty." And so I just was ignoring her. And then next thing, she's never tried to do that before.
No.
So I was a little frazzled. And so I was like, that happened. I drove her around to get her to take a nap. Then I ran inside for that meeting we just had, Tara. And then I was like, I just need to like brush my hair. Let me just brush my hair.
Totally understandable.
Well, it looks
she's okay.
fabulous. Thanks. Yeah. I have that fear that Suzanne is going to hop out any day, but until she does, I ain't taking that bar down.
Yeah. Let's let her in, and then we can all just be on there, and we're joined by a special guest.
Yeah, let her in. Don't make her stand outside.
You got an Aperol Spritz? I actually didn't get Aperol, but I did a Negroni.
Did you? Cheers.
Negroni. Cheers. Hi, Taylor.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going? You took that whiteboard suggestion seriously. There's all kinds of amazing stuff back there.
Oh, yes.
Cool. Well, thank you for doing this. So I'll give a big introduction for you in a minute. What are you drinking today?
Oh, I didn't bring a beer. This is my favorite, and what I have on hand from
you did.
Oh, it's wine. Yeah, that's
okay,
acceptable.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's different alcohol.
Those are really good.
They're my fave. So.
What are they?
It's a simpler wines from Trader Joe's. It's sparkling rosé.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh, that's fancy.
Easy to pack around too. We pack those on that food tour I was telling you about, Lauren.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll take those out to the beach.
I didn't hear about the food tour.
Well, this was a while back, but I was at a bachelorette party in Nashville. We did one of those food tours, and you had like a drink and, a bite to eat at every place, but you could take whatever you wanted to drink on the bus or van or whatever you want to call it. It's fun and delicious.
Yeah, this is easily smuggleable.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I know you like Negronis, but I just don't know what it is. Every time I hear a word similar to that, which there are several words, what is that dish in Pittsburgh that's not a drink at all? It's like a food thing.
Where they put
pierogies.
Oh,
so like when I hear pierogi and I hear Negroni.
Their salads in Pittsburgh, I think.
I was going to say on their sandwiches, yeah.
Sandwiches.
Right.
And a pierogi's Polish. Just so you know, this is really good.
Yeah,
we should start the show, and this can.
Let's get started. We can chat.
we need to get back on the. I was going to have you tell us what Negronis are.
Well, start it up, and I'll tell you what Negroni.
Oh, well, we have started. This is it. I'll introduce.
For music.
You didn't play music.
Oh yeah. Oh snap.
Taylor, don't worry. It's always like this.
I'm not scared.
Well. A Negroni is gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth. It is not Polish. like a pierogi. I think it's probably Italian.
I think so.
I'm just guessing though, but Campari is Italian, so I would assume. It's a very dry, bitter drink, but it's very delicious and refreshing. And it's like the only cocktail other than a margarita I drink.
Here we go.
Got hands down.
Yep.
This isn't Snoop Dogg.
He's coming later.
He's gonna take us home.
Yeah.
What?
I keep missing it. You do a fishing pole?
The triangle.
Okay, there we go.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I did better on the fade that time.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
All
Hey,
right.
everybody.
Hello.
Hey, my name's Shayne.
I'm Lauren,
And Tara.
and we're joined by
Taylor Francis.
Hey, Taylor.
Francis is with us. Yay.
Taylor Francis in the house.
So, guys, this is our 5th episode, and as a celebration, we invited a guest, a special guest here to join us. We also are drinking a cocktail, not because it's our 5th episode, because life is hard, and we would like a cocktail.
Facts.
Life is hard.
Facts. Hashtag facts.
I'm getting good at putting the
That's what
hashtags.
I'm gonna say.
What's that?
I said big facts is the
Big
youngest.
Yeah,
facts.
right. Yeah, big facts.
We're actually on the second half of our podcast today. We're looking at big data, and it'll be big facts and all that stuff too. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. I got to stop these little pop-ups. You guys aren't seeing the pop-ups. Are you hearing the pop-ups that
I
are
heard
coming
it.
up?
I just heard it. Yeah.
Oh, for crying out loud.
You just have to click do not disturb.
On Teams.
Yeah.
Ooh, where is that?
So
Hold on.
Shayne was asking me what a Negroni is, which is what I'm drinking. And I was telling him that, it's a cocktail, gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth. And he said he gets that confused with pierogies.
Which,
So-
as someone with a Polish last name, I'm going to find it offensive.
That's my
Because-
specialty. That's one of my superpowers is to offend people.
A
No, yeah.
pierogi is a dumpling, which is very different than a cocktail.
But pierogies are delicious.
There you go.
That is true. That is
And I
true.
feel like a Negroni pierogi dinner would really be up my alley. I
I
would
mean-
really enjoy it.
Wouldn't it?
It does sound delightful.
Yeah.
We went on a trip to Pittsburgh one time, and we met with one of the really,
That's
I think
right.
probably the biggest animal shelter up there. Animal Friends, they're
Yeah.
awesome. Great client of ours.
We went up
and,
there a couple times.
yeah, but we had pierogies.
We did.
didn't- We may have had Negronis, but I don't remember that.
I don't.
part.
I don't know if
think
we don't remember it because we had too many or no, actually I
did?
know that time we had pierogies, I was pregnant. So I was
Oh,
like,
there was no
got to
drinking on that
have
trip.
some pierogies. There was a lot of good eating though.
Yeah, that was a good trip too.
Yeah.
All right, let me turn off this thing. I'm gonna delete this out of the. Where's that little button to kill the notifications?
On your face.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like really on the Teams on your face.
Yeah.
That sounded like an insult.
I
It's
did. It
funny.
was nice.
On your face.
I
Okay,
think you
so
can also
laugh on that one. So, ladies and gentlemen, should we jump in to Taylor's portion?
Yeah, let's talk
I'm-
about Taylor. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I want to introduce her if you don't mind,
Oh,
and you can tell
no.
us. No, yeah. all right,
You can
fine.
tell us if it is accurate or not when he's done.
Yeah, tell us if it's accurate or
big
not.
facts or big lies. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, Blackbaud, let's see. We have lots of different solutions. In the last couple of weeks, we've talked about accounting solutions and fundraising solutions and how the two can interact. And having a person who really understands both the concepts of accounting and the concepts of fundraising and how the technology can work together, it's kind of a specialized skill set. And I've had clients that need help in both areas. And so when I go looking for an expert in this area, it's a little bit hard to find. And I had an animal shelter client that needed this help. And I said, where do I find one? I found Taylor Francis, or I've heard about her, and I somehow finagled to get her assigned to that shelter. I was so pleased. Well, that shelter's had some, frustrations with Blackbaud. They've had some rough days with us occasionally, and they called me on like a Thursday afternoon. And immediately when I picked up the phone, I said, oh boy, what's going on? The guy, the CFO there said, Shayne, I just called to thank you. I am so pleased and excited that Taylor came to meet with us, and it's just changed our whole world. And I said, hot damn, dude. I mean, I love this person. I've never laid eyes on Taylor Francis or met her other than knowing her name and her getting this assignment. But I was so thankful. And when she and I talked, or actually when the client told me the story of it, I could picture it in my head, because I've been there to that shelter, Taylor. I mean, I've met with those guys. And in fact, I've sat there in the room with the development people and the accounting people. And everybody's, I don't know if I'd call it an argument, but a big disconnect. The fundraising people are looking at, and they're very emphatic about and clear about how they feel about stuff. And the accounting people are clear about how they feel about it, and they're not understanding each other. So when they described to me that you got them both straightened out, I could just see the magic of it, So I think it's probably a fairly common problem that they had there. And you and I've talked about it a little bit and some of the specifics of it, but I thought, let's do a little podcast session where we talk about what happened there. We don't have to mention their name. I'll run this by them later. And if they are okay with us sharing their name, it's nothing really particularly embarrassing about it. It's just a common nonprofit struggle. But yeah, I could go on and on about it, but I'm just so excited about today's session and tackling this issue and sharing your knowledge and insight with some of our other clients who might be struggling with the same thing, whether they're using Razor's Edge or Financial Edge or both or not at all. The concepts are still completely relevant for any nonprofit out there, and the struggles of tracking designated funding and that sort of thing. So,
Taylor, so what's your background since?
My background is that I have worked for 8 years. All of my professional experience has been with Blackbaud. So I have a ton of exposure to all of our unique customers, whether you're talking about an animal shelter or a hospital foundation or a private school or a church. I've worked with all of them at this point. And I started out as a Razor's Edge customer support analyst with Blackbaud, and then probably about a year later actually moved into professional services, where I started consulting first on Razor's Edge implementations and other kinds of consulting engagements. And then while I was a Razor's Edge support analyst, Razor's Edge actually kind of handles the integration between Razor's Edge and Financial Edge. So I kind of got my first exposure to Financial Edge while I was on that team, but it was really only the pieces that integrated with Razor's Edge. And then probably a couple years into my time on the team as a Razor's Edge consultant, they had asked if people were interested in getting cross-trained to Financial Edge, and I raised my hand up and jumped on that opportunity. I too have realized, just working with Blackbaud, so many of our customers are cross-trained because they're using all these different solutions. Mm-hmm. So I just thought I want to be cross-trained too, because it's so much easier to deliver consulting services when you're using both products. If you, as their consultant who's advocating for what's the best practice, what they should be doing, if you really kind of have that big picture understanding of how they all work together. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
So I definitely, my experience with Razor's Edge has been much longer, but I jumped into doing some Financial Edge implementations. And then I'd say where I live primarily now is kind of in either the retainer space or kind of some of those unique projects where they really just need someone to do both sides of it.
Awesome.
And by the way, I did notice that I kind of checked Taylor's background. She's really smart. She went to Wheaton College and summa cum laude.
You did a background check?
I did a background check on all our guests. We do that. So we're not, this girl knows her stuff. I'm so thankful you're willing to do this. So, well, let's talk about sort of this. um, do you want me to tell the background on their situation, or do you want to just jump into it? I can.
You can share. You can share it, and then I can jump in where I picked up with them.
Yeah, yeah. They just as an example, they have a big event. This is real common. Nonprofits have a big gala. There are all types of different events, but they have an event, and somebody had come to their event and made a large gift and designated that gift to a particular initiative. Let's just call it a particular new shelter they were building in their town, right? So it was through the event, but the way they coded it in Razor's Edge made it look like it was the same amount of money being entered twice, right? Was it a Razor's Edge fund for?
Yeah. So part of the confusion that was happening here is they had this big event. They had a major gift given through the event. It was maybe like a $300,000 gift to help seed fund this mobile clinic in that part of
Yes.
town. And basically I was trying to kind of navigate a conflict between the finance team and the development team of, does the money go into the mobile clinic fund or does it go into the event fund? Because we can't put it in both places.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about a gift of $300,000, this was going to either tip them into having $1 million night for that event, or are we talking about a $700,000 night, right? And that's a big difference when you're fundraisers,
That
right?
is, yeah.
You want to talk about your $1 million night and be able to celebrate that. And so essentially, I guess just to drill it down to the conversation that we ended up having is you talked, Shayne, about how you've got finance and you've got development, and they kind of have different goals, right? Obviously, we all want to raise money. Money is what finance needs to work with. Money is how, development is kind of tracking their metrics and their goals. But the way we're looking at it and asking questions is, I'd say fundraisers really care about what inspired that gift. What did we do? Like, development officers earn their keep by proving what they do raises money, right?
Sure. And also being able to know, like, the fact we had that event brought in this money, so I want to make sure we do that event again and get that money in.
Or what specifically about that event
drove them,
inspire that.
Yeah.
Right? I want to say for that event in particular, there was like a famous politician who was like keynoted that at that event or something like that. And so it's easy to say, like, to point to that. Now, if that event now looks like it's raising less money than all the other events, you're kind of missing the impact of having that special guest there who is connected to the organization, right? So all that to say, it is kind of, we've got different goals, whereas finance is asking, what GL code am I putting this money into? I can't put it into 3 different codes, right? It's either going to that mobile clinic, which it needs to be designated and set apart for that purpose, or is it, so there was kind of this question of like, who gets credit for this? And the beautiful thing about Razor's Edge and a fundraising database is you can do both, but let me caveat that by saying Razor's Edge has different fields that you can fill in about your gifts because we're prepared to answer different questions with that data. So, if you're familiar with Razor's Edge, we've got the campaign field, we've got the fund field, we've got the appeal field, and each of those field answers different questions. So as fundraisers, campaigns is talking about kind of those overarching events. I want to say maybe for this animal shelter, their campaign was like an overarching annual campaign for the whole year, right? Then their fund in this case can specify, like, where is this gift designated? This is a gift that's designated to the mobile clinic. It does not need to be used for any other purpose. And then lastly, with the appeal piece, that's kind of where we talk about what brought in the gift. What did we do? What inspired the gift? What motivated the gift from that donor? And so in Razor's Edge, the fund is going to be mobile clinic. The appeal is going to be the gala or whatever event that was that kind of brought in the gift. And if finance cares about the motivation and inspiration, they can fill that in. If you have the integration, you can use the T codes to track that. Or, sometimes finance is like, we don't really care. We just need to know what GL code to put it in. So kind of opening some eyes around, hey, we can still track this in multiple different ways. What needs to be really clear, though, across departments is what questions we're asking. When we ask, how much did the event raise? That's a different question from what dollars hit the GL code line of the event. Do you see what I mean? Because we can't put the mobile clinic dollars in the event GL line. So hope that kind of helps maybe some of the conversation that we had to navigate through. But it was very illuminating, and it kind of helped us maybe use better language across the different departments that we're trying to see eye to eye.
It's kind of like every gift tells a story. I never thought about it that way until you just said, what questions are we asking? Each gift has multi-layers, right? And the story is, it came from an event. It was inspired by that event, but it was purposefully given for a specific designation. And that event happened because of the annual campaign, or, whatever the case may be. But there's so many layers to what goes on in a development department or an organization. And that story is being told with all the campaign fund and appeal.
Yeah.
Love it.
That was great. I love, every gift has a story.
I was just going to say, kind of from the finance side, a lot of times they don't care about all of those details, and they literally need to see, where's that money going to go? How do we need to actually spend that money? So peeling back those layers to say, what is this side's end goal? What is that side end goal? We can accomplish all of that. Just everyone needs to know how to, refer to those different pieces. And it's not a battle of, well, no, we're going to do it this way and you're going to do it that way. It's getting them on the same page, which can be the hurdle a lot of times.
Totally fair. And I would say, it's not even that. I always get nervous when I start throwing out around phrases like finance doesn't care about that. It's just that they really care about protecting those dollars so that they only go to the mobile clinic, right?
Yeah, that's good stewardship. Yeah.
There's different priorities whereas, again, development is saying, look how much money we raised at this event. And so they're looking at their event report as $1 million, and finance is saying there's not $1 million in that GL.
There's not $1 million in the bank.
Yeah.
So
the
what
bank
are you
rec
talking
is not working out here. So did they end up having to recode? Did they change that Razor's Edge Fund dash event and move that event to appeal or gala? They recode that?
I don't think we recoded it. I think there kind of was this breaking point of like, we can't say the event was $1 million. There was kind of this real pushback to, we can't have it both ways. And so what I ended up, I think the way it was set up in Razor's Edge was the fund was mobile clinic, the appeal was that particular gala. And I when I introduced that question of like, let's just clarify the question we're asking. So when you have board members who are bragging on the event because they were on the event committee and it raised $1 million, like, let's clarify that raising $1 million, let's use that language instead of, is there $1 million in the GL line item for that particular event? So just kind of clarifying the way we talk about fundraising maybe is more appeal focused or campaign focused, but when we're talking about what got designated to a particular project or program, that's when we're talking about funds. So just kind of making sure we're all on the same page, and it's not. And I think they were kind of asking, like, how do we report to our board? Do we show our board the funds, or do we show our board the appeals? We can show them both, right? Like, we don't have to show them one or the other, because it tells different stories depending on whether you're showing them the fund report or the appeal breakdown.
Yeah. And I think to your point earlier of they don't necessarily care. It's more of they don't necessarily need the detail that fundraising wants to see to tell those particular stories. And the good thing is it's a subledger, so they can always get those specifics when they need it. But on the accounting side of things, we don't need all that. That can live over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Another problem I remember them, and I don't know if there's probably more we can still talk about that. I'm still sort of got this lingering question about, were they tracking the gala as a Razor's Edge fund, and did they stop doing that and start tracking it as an appeal?
I think they are tracking it as both in some cases, because ultimately what finance wants to see is any money that comes in from the gala. They want that to a particular line item. And so I think we ended up creating specific funds that support that. But again, what we kind of talked about with the Razor team is, when you see that gala fund, think of that as unrestricted gala dollars, right? This is money that
Gala
is
dollar.
kind of gala dollars. It's kind of tied to the gala, because this is kind of where it's going from a finance standpoint. Like, they keep that money separate from their other, unrestricted fund. But it's almost because that becomes kind of the money that funds next year's gala, if that makes sense. So in that case, they almost duplicate what's in the fund field and what's in the appeal field, because again, the question that finance needs to see the answer to is that money, if it's unrestricted, it's not restricted to some other program that's being funded, it does kind of go back into a gala GL code.
Okay,
that is why I'm not an accountant.
Well, what you just said, though, kind of clarified it for me. So in fact, okay, so they actually did raise $1 million, and it was just that 300,000 of that million was designated to be used for the mobile clinic.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were saying they only raised 700,000 and they wanted to call it $1 million.
Oh, no.
I've also seen that happen as well.
I mean,
Okay.
you got to be careful, because I kind of joke with and I probably err on the side of development. Like, my development experience prior to Blackline was I was a phonathon caller for my college.
For your college, huh?
Asking people for money.
You know what? I love the phonathon callers. I just have to say, kudos to you. I love when a kid at the College Charleston calls me and asks me for money. I'm like, sure, you're doing such good things.
Yeah.
I will definitely donate.
Well, and I'm like, what's the hot topics on campus lately?
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What's your major? Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, so I don't think I've gotten a phonathon call, though, because maybe
I haven't all year.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
But I do feel like I kind of joke that if you're familiar with Razor's Edge, we've got soft credits, because in a lot of cases you do need to give a soft credit for a gift to a lot of different people. And I've kind of joked that sometimes nonprofits get a little bit like Oprah, like, you get a soft credit, you get a soft credit, everybody gets a soft credit.
That's awesome.
So you got to be careful. And that's why, again, I even sometimes phrase that with reports that we're running in Razor's Edge. Like, are we asking a question from a development standpoint? Are we running a lie bunt, and we need to see who has not given this year? And in that case, we do want to see soft credits, right? Like, we want to see anybody who touched that gift, because if they've already given this year, we don't want to be bugging them for a gift saying, we haven't seen your gift this year, when it was just through their business or through their spouse or through, one of those kind of unique circumstances. But if you start throwing reports like that over to finance, they're going to be like, we're not integrating. We don't want these systems talking to each other. It's multiplying gifts over there, and we can't run with that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, another thing, and I'm throwing this kind of at you out of left field, sort of. They had some struggles with how to count pledge payments. So in Razor's Edge, if you don't code it, so you can, a cash gift can be mapped to a certain debit and credit account, right? And then a pledge can be mapped to a certain debit and credit account, and then a pledge payment. Those are 6 different accounts.
Yeah.
Right. And potentially different, well, maybe not different projects and grants, but so I remember them struggling with that. Were you part of that discussion, or?
Well, so when I came in, they had already had the integration set up, and it was, to be frank, I don't know who set it up. They I think worked with someone like 10 years prior.
Yeah.
And
It was actually a third-party consultant. It was not a black box.
yeah, it would never be black box.
No, it was, no, seriously, it was.
But
I'm not kidding. Seriously.
It was
For
bad.
real.
And what I'll tell you is, so talking about what you're talking about with cash pledges and pledge payments, the GL accounts for those need to be completely different because think about cash. We're just going to talk in layman's terms and not accounting terms. That's brand new revenue because it's not attached to any sort of previous promise that we would have booked as revenue. It's new revenue we're putting in the bank. So those are our two sides, debit and credit. New revenue, putting it in the bank. A pledge, that's new revenue. We're counting that as revenue, but it's not something we can put in the bank. So different set of accounts. And then lastly, a pledge payment is money we can take to the bank, but we can't count it as revenue because we already counted it as revenue when we put the pledge in.
Yes.
So when I looked at their GL distributions, when we were kind of, just evaluating, looking at everything, they had the same credit and debit accounts for every single one of those. I thought,
oh Lord,
this is a disaster. Like,
that's terrible.
no wonder finance is saying, no way, we're not doing this.
Yeah, that's awful.
It was not good. And I would say anybody who even just has like 101 knowledge of accounting, which I would say if you're going to try to set up the integration, you need to know a little bit about those debit credits. It was not good. So
Important. If that's important.
Debit, cash, credit, revenue. Debit, cash,
there you go.
Revenue.
That's the cash combo that you just talked about.
That's the one thing I took away from my accounting class. Now,
no, that's great. That's exact. And so, anyways, all that to say,
I love how you just described it, though. I mean, you can take the money to the bank. It's very clear, even to a layman, what you just described. So that's
that's the kind of language that I use when I'm talking to development. Because development, you say the word debit and credit, and they're like, eyes are closing over,
You mean like my debit card at the
no, exactly. They're like,
no, that's a withdrawal.
Okay. Money,
Right. Yeah.
But then if I'm talking to finance, I'm like, we're crediting pledges receivable, or debiting credit pledges receivable and crediting revenue, and they're like, okay, we can trust her, like we know.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love it, and it's not rocket science, but if you're not an accounting minded person, you're like, it's like a foreign language. I mean, you might as well.
It is to me, to be honest. I still am like, whatever.
Yeah.
As soon as you say that, my mind shuts down. It's not even that I don't get it. It's like, I don't want to know.
I don't want to understand this. Yeah.
Someone else will know.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the biggest part of what Taylor's doing is like facilitating that conversation of folks
like
that don't necessarily. Yeah. Well, and it's like, finance wants the control around it. And if you don't set it up properly, it doesn't give them faith or trust in the information feeding over, but then you're doing everything manually. So it's super important to get on that same page so everyone can save hours of manual work and time and reconciliation.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and I sometimes try when I'm engaging in a consulting project like this, I try to set at the beginning that my goal is that finance gets what they need from a reporting standpoint. They want accurate data, right? That's their main priority. But I also know that development has priorities too. Like we don't need to not count the $300,000 gift toward the event because of this type of like confusion, right? Development needs to be able to accurately measure the success of their fundraising events and fundraising initiatives, right? So I usually try to come in and say, like, what do you need? What are your requirements? What are the most important priorities for finance? But what are the most important priorities for development? Because usually we can make both sets work in the integration. It just requires like a prioritizing of like, this is what's most important to us. And I know with finance groups, they just want accurate data. And so I usually just have to prove to them, like, we can make this accurate, but first of all, we need to not have every single gift going into the same debit and credit account, because that's just gonna blow the.
Doesn't help much.
Yeah. The for the most part, I've well, in your experience, who goes into Razor's Edge and enters those debits and credits, those accounts? Does the setup for the mapping for the integration? Is it an
Yeah,
accounting person or a development person?
I would say it doesn't have to be an accounting person. You have to have an accounting person signing off on it. So I would put a little bit more of the onus on the accounting side.
Makes sense.
Yep. And then as far as just the like weekly or daily procedure for people to post to GL, I always clarify for clients when it says, when you're in Razor's Edge and you click a button that says post to GL, it's not actually posting to your general ledger. It shows up as an open batch. But are you finding that people generally have a development person do that or an accounting person push that button?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I would say it definitely depends on the organization, because you definitely have some development, like database administrators who are super accounting minded, who can totally run with that kind of task. I think even with the animal shelter, they have the director of development is actually the one pushing the button, because he's just really, really aware of what finance needs. But what I would say is commonly, because when you think about how you're posting to Financial Edge, you're right that it doesn't post anything to the actual general ledger, but it does essentially create that open batch. So everything that got entered in as a gift translates into these open batches in Financial Edge. And when a lot of our customers use a posting option where it summarizes the activity to the cash account. Think, if you'd make a huge deposit of 20 checks, you want to just see the one deposit, because that's going to tie to your bank statement directly.
Nice and clean, yeah.
And you can kind of start to see that how these transactions get grouped together now really has an impact on how finance is doing their reconciliation and other kinds of activities. So I tend to find that finance wants control over that process. So it tends to be finance driven, or I would say, again, you just have to have a very finance oriented person on the Razor's Edge side, because again, the stakes are high finance if it is done incorrectly. So I tend to see them wanting more control. But that does require, then they have to get access to Razor's Edge. You can set up Razor's Edge so that they only get access to that specific area, or maybe view only access to records, so they can do some review. But this is where it becomes really important to develop some clean policies and procedures around how you're doing this. Because if you have that really well defined, then almost anybody can do it. You just, the issue I usually find with this is that finance wants control, but if they need for like separation or segregation of duties to kind of have different people doing different things, sometimes it does fall to development.
Well, and I would say, as much as policies and procedures is an eye roll because it is so time consuming to put together, it is well worth the time.
100%. And then you can fall back on it. And
Exactly. When I was in training, we'd have certain classes and it's like, who has a policies and procedures guy? Like, show of hands. And people are like, it hasn't been touched in 10 years. And I'm like, hey, there are some people that don't have their hands up at all. You are winning this battle right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What else would you say, like one or two things that you say on a consulting engagement when you're making recommendations to clients? Try this or do this, or this could really help your process. What comes up over and over again that is kind of a best practice that we haven't already talked about?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of like shout out a couple of these. So I tend to find that the easiest way to set up the integration in a way that just becomes really easy and sustainable to continue over time is when you map your Razor's Edge funds to a Financial Edge project. That's kind of the easiest way to set up the integration, because for each fund in Razor's Edge, you can link it one-on-one to a project. And typically the concepts relate the most between the two systems. So fund to project is one recommendation that I often make. When it comes to posting, I usually recommend posting a summary to your cash and AR accounts only. That's what I was just kind of calling out with grouping together all the deposits in a single batch, for example, so that it just creates one entry to a cash account that totally makes your reconciliation a lot simpler.
And then detail
And
on the other side of the.
detail on the other side, usually with the constituent ID and the gift ID as part of what's being posted, because then you can always find the gift that's in question.
So you don't necessarily put the constituent's last name as a reference field. You'd say constituent ID and gift ID.
You can, but you're limited to 50 field or 50 characters in there. So the real estate in that reference gets pretty expensive. So constituent ID and gift ID, you can always find who you're looking for, but whatever else would be helpful at first glance when finance is reviewing those kinds of entries.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
That's usually what I recommend. I tend, and this becomes potentially less feasible as you grow, as your organization scales, but I tend to find that the best practice from a like credit card reconciliation standpoint, especially if you're using something like BBMS, right? So BBMS now, for a lot of our customers, I think at least for customers in the US, there is that option to go to daily, or at least work daily disbursements. And I find that that's a great call, because my recommendation tends to be to almost do like a micro reconciliation with each of those disbursements, because the timing issues can be a little funky when you're dealing with, they gave the credit card gift on this day, then it's not going to show up in the bank until later. I usually just say, for your credit card gifts that are getting processed by BBMS, wait until those disbursement reports are available, and then you can query on those particular gifts and then post those over, so that, again, that batch ties to the disbursement that you were getting. And then you just add a line to your journal entry and Financial Edge to take out the fees. And it just kind of makes that reconciliation process simpler, rather than waiting till the end of the month and then just hoping it all ties up, right?
Yep.
I mean, again, sometimes that's what you have to do, but I just find that kind of keeps everything, like, you know exactly what's in those batches as they're coming over. And that's something that we worked through with the animal shelter we've been referencing. And they just kind of kept an eye on those disbursement reports. And usually when you get the disbursement report, you can see all the dates that are included, if there's multiple dates, and then just post those over. We would set up a query. We ran the cash receipts journal just to make sure the amounts tied, the gross amount, to what we had in Razor's Edge. And then we take that same query and post it over to Financial Edge.
I love this. Okay, so because this is something I've been wondering about for a while. I know that credit card processing is not as cut and dry as everybody wants it to be. I mean, you know, I might swipe my card and it's a Discover card or something, and somebody else does Amex or whatever, but it's never, oh, $1,000 came in today, and it's in the bank tomorrow. It's not that simple. So just to, for people who really want to take your advice and run with it, let's get a little bit into the weeds, if you don't mind. So in Razor's Edge, you're saying am I logging into my BBMS portal to get that list that you're talking about and matching it up in Razor's Edge, or is this just a report in Razor's Edge?
Yeah, no. So right now it's a report in the BBMS web portal. So you would take, I think there's a summary and a detailed disbursement report. And I don't know if we can follow up with show notes or something where I can get you the exact name of this. But
show notes, baby.
You can go into the BBMS web portal, download that report. And what's great about it is, again, depending on like the payment method, sometimes credit cards get processed one day, ACH gets processed a different day. Basically, when I'm working with a customer, we'll set up kind of like a starter query that takes all the gifts from this date that had this pay method, and then all the gifts from this other date that had this other pay method, you know, because sometimes it may be like a 1 day delay, I think, with ACH, just with the different hoops you jump through with your bank. And we'll take those gifts, create the query, and we run it through a canned report in Razor's Edge. I like the cash receipts journal for this one because it does break it down by gift type and I think pay method as well. And you can just compare those totals to the disbursement report and the cash receipts journal. And I would say 90% of the time, those totals are going to match. And then you just have your gift, your batch, and you post that over. The other 10% of the time, the cash receipts journal gives you the detail, and you can kind of just compare like what's missing. The thing I also like about the micro reconciliation is sometimes you have things like chargebacks where the customer, or the donor, I should say, calls their credit card company and says, just kidding, this take this off my card, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And in those cases, like, there's really not a notification system that tells you that happened outside of that disbursement report. So I just find that proactively checking that disbursement report is again, I have worked with customers who are using other payment processors. There's just kind of this piece of the timing issues with credit card giving that you just have to reconcile that. And so I find that the micro reconciliation on either a daily or a weekly basis, if you're doing the weekly disbursements, is better than storing it all up till the end of the month and just posting things over without necessarily knowing have they actually hit our bank yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just gets confusing.
Yeah.
Cool. That's super helpful. All right. Is there anything else? Did we forget anything, or should we have asked certain questions that we are not thinking about?
Let's see. I mean, one thing I will also just call out, again, this is really product-y, but the way that Razor's Edge kind of talks to, and honestly, I love this about the integration, that the integration kind of translates a combination of the fund that you picked, the gift type that you picked, so things like, is it a cash outright gift or is it a pledge? And you can also throw in the gift subtype if you need like another fork in the road. Like if all cash gifts to the mobile clinic don't all go to the same, maybe we split it up based on if it was an individual who gave or a foundation who gave. Sometimes that happens and they go into different GL accounts. We can be really specific with that gift subtype field. It's not necessary, but I usually say, if you ever think you might be integrated with Financial Edge someday, don't just throw that field away. Like, hold it till you're ready to set up the integration, because sometimes you need it. So again, what I love about it is it just, when you're the development person putting in your gifts, you're not answering the question, what GL accounts does this go to? You're saying, this is a pledge to the mobile clinic that came in on this date, and then it just magically puts the accounts, and then when you post it over, it's there.
That's cool.
All behind the scenes. You don't have to memorize it all.
But going back to the previous question, Shayne, about who should be like configuring that, that's why I think accounting should be involved.
Definitely be there. Yeah.
They are catching the pitch on the other side.
Yeah. All right. I've got one more question I want to throw at you. So other than my client that we've been talking about all day, who, you don't have to say their name, but think of your favorite client experience as a consultant where you've been working really closely with a client and you just walked away feeling really happy and like it was a productive, successful endeavor. You got that?
Yeah. So
you got that queued up?
You got that client in your head?
Here's what I would say is, I feel like one of my most fulfilling engagements that I got to work on, the client actually does not use Financial Edge. They use a different system, but some of these same principles are in play regardless of what accounting system you use.
Sure.
This was a diocese, so totally different situation than the animal shelter, but they too, I just find that honestly a key need of some of our customers is kind of that mediator between finance and development. And in this case, the controversy that was happening was around, I guess historically they had always put in pledges for every gift. And I've seen this in many.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I've heard that and I'm like, what?
I've heard that too.
That's exhausting.
I know, right? But they put in a pledge for every gift.
I don't mean to make fun.
And then they came back. I mean, the thing that's funny too about these kind of situations is they're like, we have a 99% pledge fulfillment rate. And it's like, well, yes, because every cash, like one-time gift that comes in, you're putting in as a pledge, 100% fulfillment right there, you know?
That's hilarious.
God. But anyway, so we kind of had to navigate because there were some concerns about, well, if we're putting in, you know, these one-time gifts, one-time cash gift, I'm going to use that word interchangeably. How do we know what our new revenue is? And I'm thinking, guys, like the posted GL piece of Razor's Edge is going to totally fill those needs. And I guess I'm kind of a broken record, but I would articulate, and this is the fun thing about Razor's Edge reports, is if you need to see pledges in cash with no pledge payments involved, because you need to calculate that revenue total, you can do it, right? Like you can pick and choose exactly which gift types need to be calculated in that particular, you know, question we're asking, right, to answer that question from finance. So I actually love kind of getting to, I mean this in the most respectful way possible, but kind of like put me up against a CFO, you know, like
yeah, totally.
I'll get you what you need. And that's kind of been a fun position I keep getting put in as a consultant who does both Razor's Edge and Financial Edge. And it was pretty dire. I think at the beginning of the trip, I want to say even maybe Blackbaud was like, please go on this trip because they're about to walk away. We were only like 2 months into their life as a Blackbaud customer. And it's just, they could not get on the same page. Finance was like, this is doomed to fail. Like Razor's Edge thinks we want our old system back. And I think their old system was basically just an accounting system. Like it didn't have the donor fundraising kind of elements to it. Yep. And so the case that I had to end up making was there is value in knowing when a donor gives one time versus pledge, right? Like part of the fun of data-driven fundraising is starting to understand donor behavior and why do they give one time versus pledge, and who does that more often, and how do we use that information to drive better fundraising results, right? So I was trying to kind of paint this picture of like, you can still get what you need, but you got to let these fundraisers fundraise, you know? They need to be able to treat these gifts differently when they really come in differently, right? Like that. I've said before, like we want Razor's Edge to be telling the truth about what happened. So like the truth is not that they filled out a pledge card and then gave $25, you know, they just spent $25. They gave $25 online or something.
Yeah. It goes back to your communication strategy too, of like, I'm going to communicate with one-time donors very differently than someone who's committed a pledge and is given every month or, you know, making the payments on a schedule.
Totally. So it was pretty dire. I remember I wore like my like power suit the first day. So I was like, nice. I gotta show them like I know what's up. Sometimes I was kind of thinking to myself like I look like I'm about 15 years old, so I have to really kind of like muscle up sometimes going into the situation.
Well, that was one of my favorite things that day when my customer called. Is I knew he had great respect for you, like because you knew what you were talking about. I mean, it wasn't like, you know,
I wore my power suit. And that was
well. If you had just been a nice person, he would have just chewed you up and spit you out, and you know, he just sent you home. But no, you stood up to him. You were polite and professional, and you're like, no, you guys aren't seeing it clearly, and you showed him the way. And so I'm so
you're both seeing your side clearly. So let me introduce you to the other side.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's too late in the game, but I'm nominating you for president of the United States.
Anybody competent.
You're so smart. We need some. Never mind. I told these guys we weren't going to get political. Thank you, Taylor.
Yes, this is awesome.
Cool. All right, we'll do this again. We're going to hang on. Thank you for doing this, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you came to join us.
Have a good afternoon. Well, hold on. Let me play some music for you to go out.
Happy 4th of July.
You have to exit screen to the music.
Well, yeah, you got to like do the steps, right? Like the escalator or something.
Should I leave through the door? No, I won't be able to leave the meeting once I do that.
Then you'll have to come back and close it out.
I love it.
But that would work
It's
too.
It's okay. That would work too. I mean, whatever you guys
Oh,
want to do.
there's me again.
There it is right there. All right, see you there.
Okay, I'm
Bye,
gonna leave now.
Taylor. Okay.